I'm Clare Power. I'm Recruitment and Marketing Director at Police Now. I've been at Police Now for just over a year, so have absorbed myself in Police Now's life, I suppose, for the last year. And previous to that, I was Head of Student Recruitment at the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales.
Great, thanks Claire. So my name is Hilde from Helsdingen. I'm Senior Client Success Manager at Capp. I've been with Capp for the last 4 years. My background is in occupational psychology. And I've got the honour and the privilege to be working with Police Now for the last 2.5 years with Claire now and also your predecessors. And we would really love to share the story today about what we've done so far.
So, I suppose just before we kick into perceptions around policing, and apologies for those of you that might already know about Police Now, but Police Now was basically came from a very, I suppose, a small idea a number of years ago that our two co-founders had. So we had our two co-founders who were in the Met Police, and they were sitting over lunch one day talking about the challenges that they were having in their day-to-day jobs and the things that they were seeing, and I suppose their desire and the reasons that they'd gone into policing around improving communities and societal change. And they were having a lunch and they were talking about feeling quite frustrated, in terms of not seeing any of that kind of traditional policing going on, in terms of uniformed officers around the streets, building trust in communities, through to, I suppose, seeing the same types of people being in the police, so the same sorts of person, whether that is in terms of how they looked or how they thought, and feeling that something really, really needed to change. And if we were to, in terms of society and making improvements and doing the things that they joined police to do, something drastic needed to happen. And off the back of that lunch, they wrote a case for change. And the case for change talked about all of these needs around gaining confidence in policing, around increasing trust, but decreasing crime at the same time, and how you might go about doing that. And part of this case for change was really looking at the graduate market and thinking, how do we make this proposition more appealing and more attractive to a graduate market, and a market that might come in with very, very different ideas to problem solving and leadership. And so it all stemmed from there. The case for change was presented to the commissioner, and it was all approved very, very easily with 95% of the vote. And the Police Now programme kicked off, and it was incubated within the Met Police in the first year. And in the first year, it successfully recruited 70 graduates to go into the Met and do this 2-year leadership programme. And so that was 2015. We're just recruiting for our 5th cohort now, and we've got 28 partner forces around the UK that take our graduates into their forces and put them on the streets to be neighbourhood police officers, fully warranted from day one of their training. We give them an intense 6-week training programme, which is very different to direct police entry, and then they're fully warranted officers in their force for the duration of the two years, completely ring-fenced to neighbourhood policing, focused on looking at those problems that have existed in those really, I suppose, challenging neighbourhoods for years and years and years, and finding ways to put long-term solutions in rather than be blue light response officers focused on the kind of reactive type of crime, addressing crime and arrests, etc. So that's, I suppose, the bigger picture piece of what's happened with Police Now and what its aims were or are. And so I suppose to give a bit of background about some of the thinking that went behind how you would do this, the first thing was thinking about the perceptions piece. So what do people know about policing? They know what they've seen on TV and in movies usually. Very few people, unless it's been because they're a victim of crime or they've committed a crime, have had a real exposure to what policing is like or what police officers are like. And I suppose one of the things was there's some very old programmes. I imagine most of the people in this room won't know what those are, but anyway, there's some very old programmes, but there's obviously some new stuff like Luther that gives insights into policing. And I suppose some of that is quite true of reality, but most of it isn't. And it's looking at those perceptions and looking at the perceptions that have been created with influencers, for instance, off the back of things like this. Just another slide to, I suppose, talk about a bit of the challenge is that, most of what you would see across media, whether that's news, whether it's social, most of that is around cuts in policing, around racism in policing. And so you have this additional challenge that creates a landscape again that we need to kind of present a different story to. And I think it's actually in the title of the of our session, but actually it's not quite right. So we wanted to ask you what you think the total percentage of university finalists are interested in becoming a police officer, and I think the title says 1%. I won't ask you to guess now, but it's 1.6%, and that's pretty low when you're trying to actually recruit quite big numbers, because we're obviously recruiting grads, but police forces are trying to recruit grads as well. But the 1.6%, I always say, is actually a bit of an anomaly, because the piece around what police now do is try and find people that don't want to be a police officer. So actually, it's probably below the 1% of the audience we're trying to reach into and trying to shift their mind. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into where things began and where we are actually every single year that we're trying to recruit. It's the same situation every single time we're going into it. So here's the 1.6. So, how to sell a career that no one thinks they want. So what we had to do was think about what are the things that are important to graduates. We know that there is a real sense with this kind of younger generation that are going through uni and graduating now that they want to make a difference. They want to feel like what they're doing is going to add to society. They want to feel like they're giving something back a lot of the time. Not all of our audience, but we know there is this sense of doing something good and working for an employer that really cares. And so we wanted to really think about in our messaging, and certainly in the mission that you can see here, that reflected what neighbourhood policing is about in a way that would appeal to a graduate. So you can see from our mission, we really picked out some points about transformation of communities, and community is important to most people. Increasing the public's confidence, and we link a lot around public confidence and then how that reduces crime. And then also thinking about these people that we're putting into neighbourhoods that are dressed in police uniform and they're often on their own. They are the leaders in those communities. So it's thinking about leadership, and it might not be the traditional form of leadership, but these people need to be leaders on the policing front line. And so lots of the narrative that you'll see here has all stemmed from that societal change having an impact in community and how you can bring that impact. And that's what everything that we've done around our campaigns and attraction all links within this. It's not around wearing a uniform. It's not around this is what it's going to look like for you. It's around what the impact you have of doing things is going to be. And so with that in mind, all of our marketing and our campaigns have never ever shown any police uniform, and that's how we've really differentiated our approach to traditional police recruitment. It's all been about community. It's all been about some, statistics that represent some of the things that people really, really care about. So elderly, vulnerable people, or children growing up in social housing, intergenerational crime and the effects on a child if their parent has a criminal history. We've looked at statistics that we think graduates really, really care about, brought those to life, and followed through with the impact that you can have if you're a great neighbourhood officer on some of those statistics. And so all of the campaigners look like this. And so just to give you an insight into some of the other stuff we've done, I'm going to play you the radio ad that we used, and just to give a little bit of background, and we're renewing this at the moment, but the radio ad for us has been really, really important because of the challenges we've had around influencer on the graduate, and of course parents, friends, etc. Are really nervous about someone they care about going into policing. And so again, that focus on community impact and impact on society has been really important for us to reach out to the influencer as well, and not just the potential candidate. So in terms of the influencer and the radio piece, and also the fact that we have quite a lot of second jobber graduates applied to the programme, radio has been a really, really good format for us to use to reach those people.
Is it fair that children growing up in social housing are 37% more likely to become victims of crime? Or that the poorest neighbourhoods are more likely to have the highest rates of crime? Don't you think it's time we change the story? Police Now recruits and trains outstanding graduates so they can help transform society as police officers on the front line. The challenge is unique. If you care about making society better, apply for Police Now's 2-year National Graduate Leadership Programme. Join us. Change the story. Search Police Now.
Okay. And then the other piece that we've had to really focus on is, you know, going out on campus and all of the kind of face-to-face events we do. It's really challenging if you show up with loads of people in police uniforms because no one wants to come and speak to you. So part of our, I suppose, the positioning and the way that we've engaged with university students is the element of surprise. And what we did was look at some of the early participants on the programme. We looked at some of the cases that they'd worked on. So they've produced presentations of their impact and the impact they've made within their community. And we built games, so we built cases that are gamified. We built 6 of those around cases to give people an insight into what the type of thing is that you would do as a neighbourhood police officer, because you can't give any work experience in this. It's just can be just too dangerous. So there's not really any work experience opportunities within neighbourhood policing. So we built games, we built cases, and the laundrette here resembled, it was a kind of exhibition stand, I suppose. It was an experiential stand out on campus, and it was to represent one of the cases. So one of the cases is about a drug and prostitution ring that's centred around a laundrette, and so that's where the laundrette came from. And what we found by building a story and building an insight in this way was we were able to bring to life what it really is in terms of neighbourhood policing, but also attract people that wouldn't have come to speak to us ever if we'd just been out there as Police Now. So that's just to give you a little bit of an insight into how we address some of those, getting people to come and speak to us, which has worked very well. And we've got an update of this laundrette as a train station platform now, which is built around one of the other cases where there was loads of mobile phone thefts around train stations. And then here's just some other stuff to show you in terms of the support that we've really focused our attention on throughout our process. So this is where we start to, when people apply, we start to subtly introduce some police uniform, because obviously we can't shy away from the fact this is uniformed policing. So we've used our officers that are on the programme to sort of record videos. We've used our officers through our kind of online chats, digital mentoring and so forth. And they've been there they're there literally pre-application and then all the way through from application through the process. We positively action on various elements of the process. And here's just some examples of the things that we've done. And then over to Hilde.
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. So, so I am here as the supporter of Police Now, as from Capp. So Capp is a talent technology platform and company, and we support our organisations with a wide range of things. Mostly it's assessment across, I think these are all, it's assessment across selection, development, transformation. And the audience that we serve is anything from early careers, graduates, emerging talent, to volume, to even executive levels and experience hire and everything between that. Our focus is on assessment, and that's where we've worked really closely with Police Now as well, to make sure that we have that assessment for the right fit and make sure that we can help, in this case Police Now, finding those people, and that, in this case, very narrow percentage of the graduate market. You need to have that right assessment to get through to the centre. Is that person going to enjoy this role, be good at this role? Are they going to make that difference? At Capp, we support with technology, so everything in terms of on and offline assessment is supported with technology. And one of the true amazing things that we have been doing with Police Now is not only supporting an online assessment, which could be anything in terms of scenario-based or more off the shelf, but at the same time also having job simulations. So we have created real case study driven content where a graduate will go into an example case study, of course anonymized, and of course made sure that it's recruiting those behaviors that we scoped at the beginning, all the way through to you're actually giving advice like you would do on your first day of your job and once you've got into the role. The assessment centres that we've designed as well have got a great array of exercises. The most, and the one thing that Capp have as the first in the world is a VR platform. So we're using virtual reality that has bespoke content created with police now, in collaboration with your officers and recruitment leads, to say, can we put the candidate in virtual reality to really see what their authentic behaviour is? And the results have been amazing. And I know some of my colleagues here at Capp are also in the stand, so if you want to ask anything about VR, feel free to ask them. What we've seen with the assessment centre and the results that we got from there is that people really show that true, innate, almost reaction to certain challenges. Are you keeping calm and resilient, for example, when you're challenged? It's different than answering a question, tell me about a time when you've been challenged, when you're really submersed in that experience. I think the one thing that it's been great as well is that we have been able to use, let's have a look, use our methodology and strengths. So Capp are strengths experts. We look through strengths through 3 different lenses. So it's either performance, energy and use. So do you do that element well? Do you enjoy, do you feel good when you're doing that? And do you do it often? Especially with early careers, what's been amazing that this allows us to assess for potential. So it might be that you've never been a police officer. It's probably, in this case, even preferable that you've never been a police officer. It might be even though I've never been in this working environment. Can we then at least use that lens of, would you like to? What would you do? Can we look at it from that angle? And what we've seen there is that it's a unique approach that allows people to show their true selves rather than being too reliant on, I have to have done it before, or I have to have previous experience in this area. I think that the great thing with strengths as well is that once we started the process with police now, it was scoping what success looks like. So that first initial piece of finding those criteria for success have been all around, you need to have the right motivation. It's not just about can you be resilient, can you communicate clearly, can you be that forefront to your community, but also what is your intention, what's your motivation to do that? And that piece of that initial scope led us to the wonderful assessments that we've created. I think this is back to you.
Perfect. So actually these numbers are from last recruitment season, and we're about to close for our Neighbourhoods programme on Friday. Oh, sorry. We're about to close for our Neighbourhoods programme for this year on Friday in terms of applications. But so this is the story for last year, and I suppose just to give a sense that when we started in the first year, we recruited about 60. Last year was our 4th cohort, and we landed on 233, starting our 6-week intensive training. And you might be looking at the conditional offers piece, actually, because that's quite significantly higher than those that start. And there's a really big complexity in terms of police now being seen as the employer to the candidate, when in fact we're not the employer, it's the police force that's the employer. Police now runs the 2-year programme. And the complexity that comes after we make a conditional offer is that the police force that the candidate has applied for then does all of the traditional police checking. So we'll have done screening, we'll have done things like looking at tattoos and looking at eligibility to remain in the UK and etc., criminal convictions. But actually there's a much more thorough screening process that happens once we make a conditional offer. So each force will put a candidate through vetting, medical and fitness test, and this can actually take months. So we might offer a candidate a conditional place in October, and they might not know for sure whether they're starting in July on the programme until March. It can take a long time, the vetting process. And where we find we do have some reneges, but where we lose a really large chunk of our offer holders is through things like vetting and things like the fitness piece and the medical piece. And so that presents us, I suppose, a challenge. It presents us a challenge because we want to look after candidates whether they are successful in that post-offer process or not, because it's all about the experience they're having, and it is quite an anxious time, waiting and providing lots of forms and providing lots of history. And so we have a huge job, I suppose, in that period from offer through to July, when we get people starting the programme, where we are keeping them engaged. And really, it's much more than engagement. It's supporting and helping and aiding and having those difficult conversations when it's not going to work out. So that's that piece there. And that's what a large chunk of the team's time goes towards, actually, within police now. I don't know, you don't really need to, do you want to add anything within here at the moment?
Yeah, I guess the next slide is more what we've done, or a few slides
So,
down.
yeah, so this is looking at, I suppose, the picture so far is like, I won't go into all of the statistics here, but what this is basically saying is what we set out to do was find a different type of person to go into policing that would have different ideas and different ways of addressing those problems that I've talked about. And what we wanted to be able to do was attract people that might never have had any exposure to policing through family, who'd never considered policing, because we felt that the people that have considered policing, that have family in policing, will usually join anyway. And what we wanted to be able to show is that if you find people that are totally different to that, it will diversify the culture within policing for the better. And so what we've had is some really good results about this percentage that have never considered policing, and certainly those that have connections within policing. And that's growing year on year as our numbers grow. And of course, one of the key drivers, there's probably two really, really key areas in terms of diversity and protected characteristics for policing, where policing has been very, very, very poor looking back. And the two of those areas were about BAME recruitment and female recruitment. So our BAME stats, that's the increased stat, but we're hitting actually double what traditional policing is hitting with their new entrants at the moment. And we need to do loads more. And obviously some of the positive action piece and the interventions that we make throughout the process have really, really helped us achieve that double what policing attracts. But we're really, it's such a big challenge for us, and it's such a key focus for us now. And on the female piece, we're hitting actually around 52% female on the programme, which is really, really unusual in policing. So I think traditional entry policing is about 30%. So we're doing well. We've made quite big changes and successes in terms of when you compare it across what traditional policing is doing, but we're really, really focused on doing loads better and doing much more. And so these are our drivers. So just wanted to talk about some of that to you. We have been recognised in terms of marketing campaign, in terms of our assessment and selection process, and then in terms of the programme, the 2-year programme. We've won a number of awards across the sector in the 5 years, 4 full years that we've been going. So that's been really, it's encouraging to us, but it just encourages us that we need to continue doing more and more and more. But it's helped us, I think, build that more of a recognisable brand for the graduate market, which has been helpful, which you haven't got when it's police force own marketing. So that's been fantastic. And then what's next for us? So we are just about to close our neighbourhoods programme, and we have already used virtual reality, as Hilde mentioned, VR within our assessment centre process, and that we've used that for this whole recruitment season. And the other piece that we are about to launch on Monday, so we close neighbourhoods on Friday, but we're about to launch a detective programme on Monday. So there's quite a lot of different things going on for us that means it's keeping us on our toes, which is partly why Maria, who was billed to be here with me and talk, she's actually back at the office finishing a few bits and bobs. But yeah, so as I said, we're not resting on our laurels, because actually the detective piece is really important now, because there's a shortage of detectives in the country, and the link between detective and neighbourhood policing is actually really strong in terms of if you can get all of those things right, the impact on society can be immense. So it really links within our mission. So this is why we're launching a pilot programme on Monday, but the pilot programme is going to be 90 graduates with some work experience, not relevant work experience, but some professional experience. So that's quite exciting for us. And again, within that process, it will look quite similar to the process that you saw for neighbourhoods. And we, again, will have a bespoke part of the virtual reality within it. So yeah, that's quite exciting.
It's quite exciting. And I guess the bespoke part is there as well, is that you can really then do almost the two-way street rather than saying, are you a right fit for us as police now? Have you got what it takes to be good at your job and enjoy your job? But also you can get a real life example of what it is to be in a police, or in this case, a detective scenario. So one of the rooms that we have in virtual reality is actually sits around a magistrate's court. So it's actually being in that quite, well, can I say bleak environment of a magical sort of challenging that people don't want to be there. It's something that will have an impact on you when you're there, and to support and supply and with supplying assessment materials that can help give that real impression and give that read and help you in selecting the right candidates has been truly amazing.
Yeah, I think just to add on that piece about putting a candidate into the scenario of what they might actually be doing, like very realistically, it's giving them an insight into really what this looks like, if this is what I'm going to do in my career. But it also, I think that the physical things that we see, the reactions while candidates are wearing a headset, their reactions, how they react to some very challenging situations, which is what they will have in their job, is really helpful in terms of assessing them and if they're right and being responsible, because essentially the people we offer roles to, you know, we are offering them a role into a career that can often be life or death, and so it's a really, I suppose, good insight into how people react in certain situations. So that's that piece. And I think we're going to wrap up now. We've got a very short video to show you, but I suppose just to wrap up what we've discussed, I hope what we've told you in the short period of time really that police now have been going for, I hope it's shown you that quite a lot can be achieved in terms of developing a programme, but also developing quite a mission-led programme. So we're now, after, I think in our second year, we became completely independent of the Metropolitan Police. We are working nationwide, and we are a charity. So hopefully it's shown you that how much can be achieved by coming up with a good idea and really, really pushing it like our co-founders did, and the impact that a good idea can have if you get it right and you really take it forward.